For the next few minutes, we'll examine the upcoming papal conclave. Tomorrow I leave for Vatican City to cover the ancient tradition to elect the next pope. 135 Catholic cardinals are eligible to participate in the conclave, but 2 have indicated they will not attend. So 133 cardinals will elect the next pontiff, including 2 from our area. Timothy Cardinal Dolan from the Archdiocese of New York and Joseph Cardinal Tobin, the Archbishop of Newark. We'll hear from both men in just a few minutes. We'll also look at some of the contenders to be the next pope, and we'll show you what the blockbuster hit movie Conclave got right and got wrong. But we begin by answering the questions: what exactly is a conclave, and what can we expect beginning on Wednesday?
It's been a little more than a week since the eyes of the world focused on the Vatican, but with Pope Francis laid to rest, the focus now turns to finding his successor. Beginning Wednesday, the highly secretive, highly traditional process of picking the next pope will begin. The day starts with a mass celebrated by Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, the Dean of the College of Cardinals. After that, the cardinals proceed to the Sistine Chapel and take their seats. A priest will deliver a meditation, and the cardinals take an oath. Then, with these 2 Latin words, extra omnes, which roughly translated means get out, the doors of the Sistine Chapel are closed, and the conclave gets underway. Once those doors are shut, the cardinals are cut off from the outside world. No televisions, no newspapers, no radios. And although recording devices are not permitted, we know this about the voting process. The cardinals sit in 2 rows on both sides of the chapel. They walk down a center aisle and cast their ballots at the chapel altar in front of Michelangelo's Last Judgment. The cardinals will take a single vote on Wednesday. At the same time, tens of thousands will gather in St. Peter's Square, their eyes fixed on the Sistine Chapel chimney. White smoke means there is a new pope. Black smoke means the voting continues until someone gets a 2/3 majority. I was in the Vatican 12 years ago for day 1 of the conclave.
The spiritual goosebumps felt by the so many people who were in St. Peter's Square watching and waiting for the smoke to come out, well, those goosebumps by now have worn out. The black smoke clearly indicated that the Roman Catholic Church at this hour is still without a pope.
If a pope is not elected in that first vote, the cardinals will return to their quarters and then conduct 4 votes each subsequent day, 2 in the morning and, if necessary, 2 in the afternoon.
So how long will the conclave last? Well, that'll be up to the cardinals. There is no deadline for the conclave to end, but if history is any guide, the last 12 popes, dating back to 1846, were elected in conclaves that lasted between 2 and 5 days. And that includes Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis. The cardinals elected both men on the second day of voting. And in case you're wondering, the longest conclave took place in the 13th century. It took 2 years and 9 months to elect Pope Gregory X. Here's one reason to believe this might be a short conclave. The cardinals have been in Rome since Pope Francis died. They've had time to get acquainted, discuss the needs and the direction of the church, and highlight the concerns of their flock back home. And they've done some politicking.
The College of Cardinals is gathering to pray, to reflect, and to listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit as we prepare for the sacred task of choosing the next successor of St. Peter. The questions we ask one another are very similar to the discernment of the Archdiocese. Where are we? Where is the Lord calling us to be? And how will we arrive there together?
Each of the cardinals will have a chance to speak. They don't speak about, we think this cardinal would be a good pope. No, they speak about the beauty and the challenges of the church in their diocese.
Now, Cardinal Dolan and Cardinal Tobin, they are 2 of the 10 U.S. cardinals who will vote for the next pope. The geographic makeup of the conclave could go a long way in determining the next pontiff. In fact, today, one cardinal told ABC News he wouldn't be surprised if the next pope comes from Asia or Africa, where the church has seen significant growth. So let's examine the papal contenders and who might emerge on the balcony at St. Peter's as the new leader of the Roman Catholic Church.
As dozens of cardinals arrived for their pre-conclave meetings on Friday, it was probably not lost on them the next pope was among them. So who will lead the world's 1.4 billion Catholics? Some possible contenders have emerged.
Nel nome del Padre.
This is Cardinal Pietro Parolin. The 70-year-old Italian is the Vatican Secretary of State, basically second in command to the Pope. He was elevated to cardinal by Pope Francis and has spent years building relationships with Catholics in China and Vietnam. The other Italian cardinal whose name has been mentioned as a possible successor is Matteo Zuppi, the 69-year-old Archbishop of Bologna. He was also made a cardinal by Pope Francis, and just like the late Pope, he was an inner-city priest who focused on the poor. For centuries, popes almost exclusively came from Italy or other European nations. But take a look at this map of cardinal electors in this conclave. Pope Francis famously expanded the church in places like Asia and Africa, which increases the chances the next pope will come from one of those regions. Which brings us to Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines.
Now, being a small minority doesn't mean the church is dead. We believe that Jesus is alive, and he was born and he ministered, he died, and rose from the dead in Asia.
Tagle was elevated to cardinal by Pope Benedict, but it was Francis who brought him to the Vatican to head its evangelization office. As for the leading African contender, Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Basungu is one of the continent's most outspoken Catholics. He is an archbishop in Congo and is considered conservative. The same is true about the last name on our short list, Cardinal Peter Erdu of Hungary. He has long been considered a frontrunner among cardinals looking to return to the conservative ways of Popes John Paul II and Benedict XVI. Which leads us to this important note. Of the 133 cardinal electors, only 25 were appointed by John Paul or Benedict. And finally, you probably noticed no American cardinals listed among the leading contenders. Father Brian Massingale from Fordham University explains why.
Candidates from the United States, cardinals from the United States, enter with somewhat of a handicap. Because the United States is such a major global force in the world, I think many are reluctant to add the power of the papacy also to the United States' power in the world.
But Father Massingale did concede it's unlikely, but it's not impossible to one day have an American pope.
Immediately after Pope Francis's death, cardinals headed to the Vatican and people around the world headed to their TV sets. Streaming viewership for the movie Conclave increased a whopping 283% after the Pope died on April 21st. But just how accurate was the critically acclaimed film? It does provide some fascinating insights into the conclave process, but the producers took a few creative liberties.
Conclave pulled back the curtain on the mysterious process of selecting a new pope. While it nails many details of the ritual and ceremony, it also takes some creative liberties. So what's real and what's Hollywood magic? Let's break it down. And yes, spoilers ahead. The movie recreates the stunning Sistine Chapel, the actual venue where cardinals gathered to vote. In reality, just like the film shows, the chapel is completely sealed off during voting to maintain absolute secrecy.
Let me speak from the heart for a moment.
Vatican experts praise the film's attention to detail in capturing the atmosphere of a conclave. One small nitpick: the color of the cardinals' robes. The film shows deep crimson, while real cardinals wear a shade that's more orange-red.
Everything under control.
When it comes to the formal acceptance of the papacy, conclave gets the Latin phrases exactly right. The traditional accetto, I accept, makes the election official, just as it would in real life. The movie correctly shows that modern conclaves move quickly. Nobody wants a drawn-out election that might signal a divided church. But there's one procedural error. In the film, ballots are burned after each vote. In reality, they're burned after each session, typically after 2 votes.
Grazie.
While the film accurately portrays cardinals as having behind-the-scenes conversations, it oversimplifies their positions. Real Vatican experts note that labeling cardinals as simply liberal or conservative misses the mark. Even the most progressive cardinal would be considered quite conservative by secular standards.
What is your situation?
The film's biggest departure from reality, the dramatic arrival of the Archbishop of Kabul with secret paperwork claiming the late Pope made him a cardinal in pectore, in secret. Vatican scholars say this could never happen. If a pope doesn't publicly announce a cardinal's name in the presence of the College of Cardinals, that person has no right to join the conclave, secret paperwork or not.
You should be careful, Thomas.
Now, before we wrap up, we asked Cardinal Dolan about what qualities he hopes to see in the next pope. Take a listen.
Popes don't change in substance, they change in style. And everybody appreciated the style of Pope Francis. You know, how humble, how simple. Everybody remembers. It's almost like everybody has a Pope Francis story. So we certainly want somebody with his gracious, humble, simple, loving style. He was a pope with a heart. But we also would say, yeah, but Benedict had that intellect. John Paul II had that conviction of soul. And so you're kind of thinking, could we find somebody with a blend of all of them?
Not an easy task, but at the same time, it should certainly be a fascinating few days at the Vatican. And we'll be there for all of it. I leave tomorrow to cover the conclave and the election of the next pope. You can see my reports here on Eyewitness News. And ABC News will provide special coverage every time smoke pours out of the Sistine Chapel chimney. We hope you stay with us as history unfolds.